Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History Podcast. History 102. Our 10 questions series continues in episode 3. India's subcontinent's complicated relationship with Islam. So what is the relationship between Islam and Hindu India when Islam arrives? And the answer is violence, looting, religious attacks, destruction of temples. A major reason for this is that the empires that are going to come out of Central Asia are seeing the Indian subcontinent as a rich place that's fairly broken up and fairly weak that can be looted. There's also the idea that there's an uncomplicated jihad factor. Islam believes that there is one super god that exists and only one, and Hinduism is a polytheistic religion with lots of gods that exist in a hierarchy. So while war against fellow Muslims, Islamic war upon Islamic war in Central Asia or in the Middle East is at least philosophically complicated, even though it goes on without too much hand-wringing, but it's at least philosophically complicated. The invasion and conquest and looting of Hindu temples, of Hindu banks, of Hindu palaces is uncomplicated. So Islamic raiders attacked India, conquered the Indus, conquered the Ganges River, looted Hindu temples, and they never felt bad about it. That's going to change with the Delhi Sultanate's legitimacy. Now, the Delhi Sultanate is going to be a breakaway Islamic kingdom on the Ganges and the Indus, so it's in northern India. And it's going to break away from the Turkish and Persian lords back in Afghanistan. Now, it's not Afghanistan yet, but back in Central Asia, the part of Asia that is east of Persia and west of China. So we're talking about the Stans, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. We're talking about Afghanistan. So it was a kingdom from there that conquered northern India and looted it and didn't feel bad about it. But they ran their empire back in Kabul. They ran their empire back in Afghanistan. And that's far away if you're on the Ganges River. And so if you're an aspiring Muslim sultan that wants to make a name for yourself, that chance to break away. It means they'd have to cross the Hindu Kush, come down the Indus, jump over a desert, come to the Ganges, then come down the Ganges to your capital at Delhi. That's hard to do, and so that's exactly what the Delhi Sultanate does. A sultan, a local official, a local lord in Delhi says, I'm going to break away. I'm not going to listen to these guys anymore. They can try and come back down here and make me listen to them. And the Delhi Sultanate's success shows that India must be ruled from India, not from across the mountains. We'll see this again and again and again, where kingdoms who start in Afghanistan, kingdoms that start in Central Asia, are going to invade India and try to rule it, and then find that they can't really rule it. It's too big, it's too far away, the distances are too hard to cover, that you have to run India from India. What the Delhi Sultanate also does is an innovation, and that is toleration for Hindu religious traditions. That is, we'll leave you alone. We won't attack your temples. We won't loot your or destroy your religious icons. we're going to leave you alone. Now, obviously, if you're a Muslim, you get to join the army, you get to join the local government, you get the best treatment from the government, and you don't have to pay taxes. But if you want to stay Hindu, you pay a little tax, you pay a tax, and we leave you alone. And this is very much Islam 101. It goes back to the early Rashidun in the Middle East. It's how they conquered Persia. It's how they conquered the Byzantine Empire. They don't convert huge numbers of people. Now, Persia will convert, but that's in the future. The Middle East will convert, but even for a couple hundred years later, when the Crusaders arrive around 1100, most of the Middle East is not Muslim. It's mostly still Christian. Most people are still Christian. So there's this idea that if you pay a tax, sure, but if you want to become Muslim, you get all these privileges. And so what happens is a conversion of the local elites. There's no forced conversion. There's nothing by the sword. There's nothing you must be Muslim or you die. It's just, it's better if you're a Muslim in this Delhi Sultanate. You get better privileges, less taxation. You get access to more things. It's kind of like being a Christian in Constantine's Roman Empire. If you could put Christian on your resume, you got access to a whole slew of jobs pagans didn't get. And so Constantine didn't have to force anyone to be a Christian. People became Christian because he had access to the money, and they wanted money. And the same is going to happen on the Indus and the Ganges in India. You get a locally loyal bureaucratic group who either were Muslim to start with, they're Muslim foreigners from the other side of the mountains, so they're loyal ethnically, they're loyal from the beginning, or you convert a group, give them privileges, and assimilate them in so that they are loyal because of their privileges that they don't want to lose. So you suddenly get, by toleration of Hindu religious traditions, and not forced conversion and looting and murder, you get a locally loyal bureaucratic group of people who slowly become Muslim. So what happened to Islam in India during this Delhi Sultanate? It spreads. Urban Hindus convert. So in order to get access to the merchants, to get access to political power, to get access to military positions, or if not for them, for their kids. And so Islam is going to spread in the Indus, and especially in the Ganges Delta. Not as much in the Ganges River, but the Ganges Delta. And the reason why is very simple. Those are the parts of the Indian subcontinent that are tied by trade or culture to other places. The Ganges Delta is where all the trade to Indonesia, to Burma, to East Asia is goes from. And the Indus is the only connection to Central Asia. And all of the people in Central Asia are all Muslims. So it's beneficial if you want to make more money, if you can show up and say you're a Muslim. So Islamic political success happens in Hindu India despite being vastly outnumbered. Notice the Delhi Sultanate lasts some 300 years. And so despite being vastly outnumbered, India may have 50, 70, 100 million people in it by 1500. Muslims are going to be a small percentage of that. They still have peace and stability. What about Tamerlane? The sword of Islam from 1336 to 1405. Tamerlane is the last of the Mongol conquering kings. And he wants to put Genghis Khan's empire back together. And he wants to fuse it together with Islamic unity. And what he does is he adds guns. As if the Mongols weren't tough enough, he adds guns and cannons to the already substantial Mongol-Persian power. And he's going to smash the Turks. He's going to conquer Mesopotamia, and he's going to go east into India. And he's going to destroy the Delhi Sultanate. Now remember, the Delhi Sultanate is Muslim. Didn't matter. Tamerlane needs money. Tamerlane wants money. India has money. And so he rolls into Afghanistan, rolls down across the Hindu Kush, rolls down the Indus, crosses over to the Ganges, and smashes, absolutely smashes Delhi. That's why the capital of India today is New Delhi, because Tamerlane destroyed Old Delhi. 900 elephants are going to be used to cart off Delhi's wealth in 1398. So Islam again loots, pillages, and impoverishes India. The Delhi Sultanate lost all legitimacy because if they, a Islamic kingdom, can't keep out other Islamic conquerors, then what use are they? Why should we have? The benefit, if you're Hindu, was the Delhi Sultanate didn't bother you that much. And you didn't get invaded by Islamic terrorists from across the mountains looking to get rich. Well, that's who Tamerlane is. He comes in, he murders lots of people, obliterates cities. So why would you listen to the Delhi Sultanate anymore? They couldn't do the one thing you needed them to do, protect you from Islamic invasion. So what happens is the Delhi Sultanate begins to fall apart into hundreds of teeny Hindu and Muslim states. So yeah, the Delhi Sultanate will last technically till the 1520s, but it's a rump state. It's a cover boy. It's a fanboy cover version of the Delhi Kingdom. It's a bunch of people, fanboys, being like, "We're the Delhi Sultanate, yay!" Like nobody cares because they lost all legitimacy. They lost all power. So into this mess, the collapse of the Delhi Sultanate, the fracturing into hundreds of little kingdoms, some of which will be Muslim, many of which will be Hindu, comes Sikhism, which is started in around 1500 and 1499. It starts with Guru Nanak, who is like kind of Confucius in a way. It's a tough analogy to make, but this is an age of warfare. This is an age of Indians murdering other Indians and bloodshed everywhere. And Guru Nanak has the argument of putting everybody together. And so he says there's no Hindus, there's no Muslims, there's only God. So if you take my 101, that's kind of what St. Thomas Aquinas says. There's revelation and there's science, and they both lead to God. So the Hindus and the Muslims all lead to God. It's just a different way of understanding God. And so it's an attempt to create a unity culture by combining the largest parts of the Indian subcontinent's culture. Islam, which has Hinduism and Buddhism. So Islam, it takes Islam. It's monotheism. Sikhism is monotheist. There's going to be one God. But Sikhism is not going to have heaven and hell. So see, it's taken a little bit of Islam, monotheism. Actually, that's a big part of Islam. But it's getting rid of the heaven and hell part. It takes Hinduism. It takes the idea of meditation. Samsara, which is rebirth. You keep coming back in a new form, right? But there's no caste. There's no caste system. So it breaks with Hinduism that way. It takes a couple things from Hinduism, but breaks with it in other ways. And then it takes from Buddhism. It takes nirvana, but there's no monks. It also, as a major philosophy, is to overcome what's called the five thieves, the things that rob you of happiness, the things that rob you of self-worth, of happiness, of satisfaction, of success. So it's an attempt to combine kind of the best parts of these different philosophies and religions while melding them together. You get the idea of the saint soldier, who, in a Western way to think about it, is kind of a knight or D&D paladin. It's Lancelot. It's the warrior of good. As if a Boy Scout was also a soldier. And this is a way of converting the Islamic idea of jihad. The Islamic idea of jihad goes back to kind of a Roman philosophy of the world should be Muslim. Christianity does the same thing. The world should be Christian. And so that's a very kind of Roman way of thinking about things, right? The world should be Roman. And so what Sikhism does is convert that idea, Islamic jihad, but put with it a strenuous morality to it. That war is natural, it's masculine, but it must be just, to defend the innocent, to defend the persecuted, to defend the weak. And that appeals to what is called the martial races. This is a kind of a British idea. But the groups in India has lots of different ethnic groups, lots of different lingual groups, lots of different peoples, all with their different traditions. India is immensely diverse. It's a continent of diversity. And there are some people who are just like war better than other people. There are just people who are better at war than other people. And Sikhism is going to appeal to those people. Oh, you mean I get to keep doing war? And now it's justified and I'm good at it and I'm going to go to nirvana for it? Oh, that's pretty cool. And so it appeals to those peoples. And so it's successful. It's not Hinduism successful. It's not even Islam successful. But it does create a third way. People, if they want to, can live. To try to get along with other people. It's an attempt, kind of from scratch, to create a new universal culture. Which is a bold thing to do. If nothing else, it's bold. What about the Mughals? Now, the Mughals are going to show up. The Mughals are going to be another one of these peoples from over the mountains who come, Islamic peoples who come in, conquering their way through the rivers and down into Bengal. What is their innovation? Well, Babur, the great conqueror, comes across the mountains and he starts as just another Islamic raider. He looks to India as just another one of these Islamic raiders that we've dealt with time and time again, but now he's bringing Turkish cannon with him. He has a different kind of army. He's got an army that can smash Indian cities and then control the land. And all of these small little kingdoms can't stand up to it. They don't have the firepower. So between the cannon and the muskets, he's able just to sweep right through, right down the Indus, right across the Ganges. And so what is it showing? It's showing that India has completely fallen technologically behind Eurasia. That the Persians, the Turks, the Europeans all have these weapons, and India doesn't. New superweapon has arrived, and Indian armies and Indian cities cannot stand up to it. So what about Akbar? So while the Mughals are going to conquer the Indus River Valley, they're going to conquer northern India, They're going to conquer the Indus, the Ganges, all the way to Bengal. They're going to conquer the traditional conqueror's amount, what you could because of geography. See, the problem with India, if you're a conqueror, is there's no easy way to get from the north to the south. There's no river like the Nile that connects the north to the south. The rivers in India run perpendicular. So that allows you to conquer northern India easily. But going south is always, always, always hard. It's always complicated. Southern India is more rural. There's less cities to anchor your armies in. There's less trade. There's less roads. There's less connection to the outside world. There's less people. There's less of everything. It's more isolated. It's more rural. And so if you look at the map on the video, you'll see this massive empire in the north of the Indian subcontinent, and then all of these kingdoms south of that. Well, because they're hard to take over. It's just physically hard to bring an army into central India and then into the southern Indian peninsula. So what does Akbar do? Akbar the Great, who's going to rule for some 50 years, creates a bureaucratic state. He's going to hire Sikhs and Hindus into the army and into the government. So we're going to have more than toleration. We're actually going to tap into these other peoples, these conquered peoples, and use their expertise. Akbar is going to increase trade with the outside world and make India the Indian subcontinent, into the second largest economy. And by 1600, it had 22% of the world's goods. So he's going to connect India to the outside world. This is over the mountains to the Middle East, but also a lot of shipping. A lot of from Bengal to Indonesia, and a lot of the west coast of the Indian subcontinent from the Indus, from the west coast to Arabia and to Africa. There's toleration for non-Muslims. He gets rid of the religious tax, even something that the Delhi Sultanate didn't do, and allows local judges to use local religious law. So Hindu judges can use Hindu rules to settle Hindu disputes. And Islamic judges can use Islamic law to settle Islamic disputes. That's good for peace. It's bad for unification. Because what if you have a problem between a Hindu and a Muslim? Whose law do you use? So Akbar gets peace, but the Mughal Empire is not going to create a new super culture that's going to unite everybody. So there's still those fault lines. They're under the surface, but they still exist. There's nothing about the Mughal Empire that's culturally unified. It's simply sitting on top of all of the peoples and all of the cultures and all of the different languages and all of the different traditions that existed before they arrived. So what did the Mughals do? What cultural influences did they bring to India from the Central Asia? And the answer is Persian. They bring Persian influences. The most long-lasting is going to be Urdu, the language, the simple language, a Persian language that is now the major language in the modern country of Pakistan. They bring Urdu with them. They bring monumental architecture that is clearly Persian. It's actually this combination of Persian, Chinese, and Mongol from the Ilkhanate, which we don't really talk about, but the Mongols conquer the Middle East, and they mix all of these cultural ideas together, and that's kind of how you get the giant Taj Mahal, the Red Fort, the kind of stuff that looks Persian. It starts in the Ilkhanate with this soup that has all of these different cultures that the Mongols smushed together. So you get this monumental architecture, huge stuff. You still want to go. People still today want to go see the Taj Mahal. Now, the Taj Mahal was built by a successor to Akbar, Shah Jahan, whose name means King of the World. There's a title. In the 1630s, in his second capital in Agra. He built it for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, who died giving birth to their 14th child. So I put her picture up because when you have 14 children, you deserve to be remembered in history. We're going to build this massive monument to her, this massive mausoleum. He's also going to build the Red Fort, which is a palace complex for the Mughals. It's kind of like the Ming Forbidden City. It's got the giant walls, and it's there as a kind of a safe house, right? It's deep inside the Indian subcontinent, and so it's, hey, if the Mughal emperor, if there's a revolt or a war and the Mughal emperor is besieged, he can hang out in the Red Fort for months, years, and wait for a relief army from either the Indus or from Afghanistan or from Central Asia to come and save him. But all of these things show Persian influences. They're not in the Indian subcontinent. So Mughal India is rich, it is peaceful, it is sophisticated. It is bringing in these new cultures that the rich, the elites, will buy into. If you're a Muslim in India from the Delhi Sultanate era, if you're one of those families that converted, this is fine. You have a job, you can enter into the service, you could work, you can sell stuff to the Mughals. The Mughals are perfectly willing to absorb you in. No problem. If you are Hindu or Sikh, you can still get a job. You can still do well in Akbar's kingdom. Your family can do well, your children can do well. So we have this new culture for the elites that's impressive. That is a reason you may want to convert. But you don't have to convert. You don't have to become Mughal. This system can work and does work as long as nothing bad happens. Things are great. Under Akbar, no problems. Things are great. The Mughal Empire slowly expands. Things are great. Under Shah Jahan, same thing. Buildings like the Taj Mahal go up. More wars on the border that are small scale that bring in new peoples who can be incorporated in. Then Aurangzeb becomes Shah. Aurangzeb is going to be Shah for 40 years. He is the third son of Shah Jahan. And his reign is severely problematic because it is both high and sets everything up for the fall. So it is kind of to be careful what you wish for. He fights his brothers in the earliest days in a civil war. He's going to kill two of his brothers. He's going to actually arrest his own father for a while to run kind of the empire, even though his father was technically in charge. That's to make sure that he takes over and not one of his more liked brothers. He makes deals with the Europeans. He allows the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese trading rights. The British will come into Bengal in the same time period. And he makes the Mughal Empire the largest economy in the world. If you're watching the video, you can see his empire. It's huge. What he does is takes money from the Europeans. He takes that money he's making from European trade and turns it into wars against what were called the independents. These people that when the Mughals came through, they made peace with by just saying, you can stay in charge, just don't revolt. Remember I said that there were these fractional lines of ethnicity and politics that are under the surface? Well, Aurangzeb is trying to get rid of those. He's trying to erase those lines. He's trying to make, if not everybody Mughal, everybody part of the Mughal Empire. So there's wars within the Mughal Empire to erase people who used to think of themselves as independents, the Sikhs in the Indus and the Punjab, the Pashtuns in Afghanistan, all of the southern Rajas that were technically like, we'll trade with you, we'll have peace, but we run our own show, we make our own laws. He's going to wage war against them as well. He did not spend money like his father on art and culture and architecture, like Akbar or Shah Jahan. So he's not building stuff that's going to overwhelm people or inspire people to want to be like, well, look at the Mughals, they're so great, look at what they built. Or is he into decadence and sexy stuff? He's too austere for that. He's very, in the West, you might call him a bit of a stoic. He's very, political. There's not a lot of cool effervescence going on in Aurangzeb's court. It's not a lot of fun, but there's a lot of planning and a lot of organization, a lot of accountants, and a lot of generals. He's also an intense Muslim. And what he wants to do is unite India by making everyone Muslim. This Hindu independence, these Sikhs, just make them Muslim. Islam has the first rule: there is one God, Allah. What's so hard about that? And so he reimposes the religious tax. He has public humiliation for non-Muslims. It's not only that we're going to tax you, we're also going to publicly humiliate you. We're going to force you to pay your tax in public. We're going to take your privileges away. He tortures Sikh leaders as if they're revolutionaries. Akbar didn't need to do this. And if you want to keep your jobs, Sikhs and Hindus have to convert to Islam. Well, that's 32% of the officials were Sikhs or Hindus. That's a third. So either they're going to convert, quote unquote, to keep their jobs, but not really mean it very much, or they're just going to walk off their jobs, which means you are now out government officials who you need to help you run the empire. And so what happened as a result of Aurangzeb's reign? Well, there's revolts. There's revolts everywhere. You get the rise of the Maratha Confederation, which becomes the Maratha Empire. That's a Hindu empire. Wait, Aurangzeb wants to create a united India by converting everyone to Islam. And he comes close. I'm going to tell you, if you look at when he dies in 1700, most of India is owned by the Mughal Empire. The problem is that it's owned by the Mughal Empire. It's not run by or administered by. It's owned. And the moment Aurangzeb is gone, there's massive revolts against him. And the kings, the sultans that come after Aurangzeb aren't as good as Aurangzeb or nowhere near as good as Akbar. And so you get the rise of a Hindu empire, the Marathas. You get the rise of a Sikh empire in the Punjab. I mean, that's the Mughal heartland. The Punjab is connecting the Ganges to Afghanistan, to Central Asia. Like, a revolt there is a problem. It breaks the Mughal empire in half, into two pieces. Then there's the Pashtun, who are in what today is northern Pakistan and southern Afghanistan. You've got the Pashtun succession, Well, that's your bye-bye to your trade routes to Persia. Aurangzeb is able to hold it all together, but after he dies in 1700, the entire empire just breaks apart. So here's the map. In 1700, when he dies, you have the massive Mughal empire, and you look at it and go, oh my God, look at how big that is. It's massive. It must be so powerful. And then 2 people later, 3 people later, 20 years later, in the amount of time I have taught at Canham County College, the Mughal empire broke into about 100 different countries. So instead of cultural unity, you get the emphasis on diverse independence. People didn't want to become Mughal. They didn't want to become Muslim. They broke apart. So instead of getting what he wanted, he actually sowed the seeds for the exact opposite. Just as the British and the French are showing up to fight over control of Indian trade. So they're showing up and making deals with these local what's called a Raj, these local princes who are like, hey, can you help me out? Can you give me cannon to help me defeat the Mughals and keep them out? And the British and the French both say the same thing. Sure, if you're willing to trade with us. And they say, sure, I need the money. Give me the guns. Now, later on, the British and the French are going to start telling these local Rajas what to do. But early on, it's a simple trade. Guns for stuff. Guns for tea, guns for spices. Guns for silk, guns for stuff. So the local Raj gets his independence. The local British or French agent gets goods to sell. Everybody's making money. The only people who lose are the Mughals, whose empire collapses and falls apart and slowly withers on the vine. So when we talk about India next, we're going to talk about India dealing with the Europeans in the 1800s and into the 1900s. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Be safe. And if you learned anything, it's like respect people's identity, because if you can't force them to be like you. They will resent you. And you might need their talent. You might need their help. You, at the very least, need them to not try to kill you or throw you out. So that's what the lesson here is learned. Akbar, the Great. Aurangzeb, the guy who causes the collapse of the Mughals. So be safe, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.